All right. Well, last week, as pretty much all you know, Margaret and Tom, be new to you maybe, we were at in person at the dad's offices in their new location right near Seattle University. And Marvin gave us this. I've still been carrying it around. Save the date, in-person banquet, May 21. You guys are all welcome. Be great to go. Support the dad's ministry. And they're calling it Fatherhood 2.0, fathering through a pandemic. But man, we heard some amazing stories and testimony of what's going on there from a lot of their staff, maybe most of their staff. And they're also reaching out in Spanish now. Marvin himself said, I just thought people weren't coming who spoke Spanish. And then somebody mentioned to me, well, maybe it would help if you had some things in Spanish and a person who spoke Spanish. And isn't it funny how, people will come if they feel welcome or if they feel like they can communicate or our ministry is speaking to them. So they're expanding and they have stuff going on in Tacoma and other places. And Marvin said a couple times, this struck me. He said he thinks every major urban area in the United States should have something like dads, something helping fathers. And, the family is just, well, it's we call it the first church. It's the home church is the main church where you learn everything and foundation of society and culture and everything. So, today we are very happy. So Parris showed up there. I think he came. He's not on staff there. He runs his own business, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his encounter with Marvin and Dad's and how that changed the direction he was going in. And I was very impressed by his attitude and openness, and mentioned that we have people share with us every week. And he says, sure, let's do this. I love it. So, Parris, you can tell us some of your story. I think a lot of it involved your mom, and it's always so wonderful to hear about strong moms. And you can go. I know if you have to keep moving, you keep your camera on when you can. You don't have to, but talk to us a bit about where you've come and what you're up to, and maybe 20-25 minutes in, we can have open discussion and ask you some more questions. Good morning, Scott.
Hey, good morning.
All right. So Parris, floor is yours. I know some of us who were there last week heard a few minutes of your story, but give us a little more of it. Glad you're here. Thanks for sharing.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It was great to meet everyone yesterday or last week at Dad's. You guys showed up and really made an impression on the Dad's facility, and you guys are really open and welcoming and very friendly, and a couple people have been in contact reaching out. It feels like family. So just want to say thanks for that. Really do appreciate that. That means a lot. So as I said before, my mom was in the military. So really I'm a military brat, if you will. So that's really started off, I think, from when I was born until about 8 or 9 years old. We got out of the military and got family in Seattle. So my mom sent us up here to Seattle, got here at a really young age. And I never knew my father, never met him or anything like that. I think I talked to him on the phone when I like a couple months before my 34th birthday. My wife ended up overhearing me talk about him, and got as much information as she could in the conversation. And then she went and found him on Facebook. And he actually didn't like Facebook. He literally only opened it for 6 months because he wanted to find me. And it was like maybe 2 weeks left into the 6 months before he was going to deactivate it. And he got an inbox saying, "Hey, I think I'm married to your son." And so from there, I had a couple conversations with him on the phone, and, you know, my heart was definitely hardened before I talked to him. But, you know, I found grace, forgiveness, you know, and I had a little empathy for him and his experiences. So I had a little more understanding on why he did it. Still, I wouldn't have done it, but, you know, why he chose not to be in my life. But from getting out of the military was a really tough transition for my family and I. As me, my older two sisters, I was born in '83. The closest to me sister, she was born in '81, and my oldest sister, she was born in '79. So we were all like 2 years apart. And my oldest two sisters are from my mom's previous marriage. And then, of course, my mom and my father, they didn't work out, so they didn't end up getting married. But yeah, came up here young age, me, my two sisters, and then my mother, single mother. And the transition, I would say, the transition for going from the military into, you know, regular society, it was a little rough. I didn't really understand it. I don't really know what happened exactly, but I know after getting out the military, we didn't really have a place to go. And so we were homeless for like, you know, 6 months at a time, a couple times. And so my mother ended up finding my grandmother, who was located in Seattle. I think we were at the time in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, I think, if I remember that correctly. And so my mother shipped us up here to Seattle after we were in, you know, a couple homeless shelters for a while. And yeah, got us enrolled to school. So I think it was like either third grade or fourth grade, somewhere around there, where I enrolled in school and became, you know, acclimated with Seattle instead of moving every year, every 6 months to every 2 years. You know, being a child, the reason why I didn't like the military is because after you meet a group of friends, it's time to leave. And so we were moving all over the world every 6 months to every 2 years max. And so I lived in Germany for a little while. I lived in Hawaii for about a year, in Maine, Arizona. I was born in El Paso. I know there's a couple of spots that I'm forgetting about, but I don't remember all the places. Those are the ones that I remember. And so when we got out of the military, man, I was just happy to be somewhere that I wasn't going to have to leave in the next few months. But we still ended up moving around, but it was still in the Seattle area. We ended up moving out to like Everett and Renton and different places, trying to find a steady place to live. But it was still in the Seattle area, and I still knew people, so that was pretty cool. And when I was younger, my mom, she was a minister. She had a call to ministry at a young age, or when I was young. I'll say when I was young, she was an adult, but when I was young, she had a call to ministry, and her experience is a little different. I won't go into all her story. Maybe she'll be able to get to know you guys and speak on that. But it was very interesting. Her being a woman, and some places not being open to women being in ministry or just serving in a certain capacity. So she was kind of shunned and didn't really get a chance to, you know, do what she thought it would be. But then she ended up finding somewhere, and they ended up accepting her, becoming a minister. And this so happened to be the exact same church that Reverend Marvin Charles was going to. So when I was in middle school, I remember I used to walk to Mimi Middle School, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. I lived in between 20th and Union and 20th and Marion. 929 20th Avenue and 933 20th Avenue. They were right next door to each other. And so I used to walk to Meany Middle School every single day. And I had good grades. You know, I had straight A's. I think I had 1B maybe. I was really good at science and math. Those were like my favorite subjects. And it was just real easy to me. But I would say what was difficult and hard to cope with and understand was, how is this helping me in real life? Right? How is this going to help me to provide for my family, my sisters, my mother? How am I going to, I'm going to school, I'm getting good grades, I go home and everybody's in pain. My grandma, she, fought for our protection. But right next door, where my auntie and everybody lived, they were doing drugs. They were doing drugs 24/7. So you come home, you go to auntie's house, right next door, and you're walking into a cloud of smoke, and you're raised in this cloud of smoke. So really, it's like you're doing secondhand drugs without even knowing. So I was raised in that type of environment. And typically, when you're in that type of environment, there's only one of two things you're gonna do, if not both. You're either gonna use the drug or you're gonna end up selling drugs. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up selling drugs, but I didn't necessarily want to deal with the drugs that they were taking because I seen what it do to people, and I just didn't like that. So I remember, like I said, walking to Meany Middle School, and there was always kids that were younger than me. There was a group of kids. One of them actually got murdered a couple of years ago, and the rest of them were kind of like just strung out on drugs, and it just breaks my heart to see them today. But they were the younger kids that were, they didn't really have the parents that cared. Their parents were strung out on drugs and all that. So they were a little more out there than I was. And they were 10, 11 years old, selling crack and all type of stuff. So I was seeing how they were being able to provide for their, families. And I'm sitting here struggling and got good grades. So I wrestled with that for a few years, man. I wrestled with that for a few years I remember one Christmas, seeing my mom had got me for Christmas. She got me like some tube socks and like some tank tops. And I was heartbroken because I was like, man, this is it. But what broke my heart the most is seeing my mom's reaction to how I felt, because I wear my emotions on my face. I don't know how to, pretend or try to act like something's cool when it's not. I'm just very emotional, and that's how I am. So my mom ended up seeing that, and she almost cried. She basically was just telling me, this is the best I could do. This is, I'm doing all I can. If I could do more, I would, but this is it. And so I cried that night, not because of what I got, but because I allowed my mom to be affected with my selfishness. I felt very selfish, for somebody that experienced their childhood, which I didn't know how drastic her childhood was, which now means so much more to me, because all the pain she went through and experienced as a child, she fought to protect us from as us being a child. And that was very, very, that's very powerful. But I cried that night because I allowed my mom to see me in a place that she didn't deserve to see me. So I made a vow to myself that we would never have a Christmas like that again. So I began to sell marijuana. And the reason why is because I seen what crack was doing to my auntie, to my uncle, to my relative. They were like, man, they were very, very evil towards each other when it came down to it over this particular drug, and towards other people. And so it was bad. I didn't want anything to do with that. So I started selling marijuana. And over the course of years, I just became more acclimated in that community. I started, hanging out with gang members, and eventually became one myself. And so me not having a father, me not having a role model or a male example in the household of what it looks like to be anything, maybe a doctor or a lawyer or just a teacher, anything. I think that, that was what I was exposed to. So it was inevitable that I was going to do it. I was going to either use drugs or sell drugs. So I chose to sell drugs. And as a teenager, I moved out. I moved out of my mom's house. I think I was like 15 or 16 years old when I moved out, because I didn't want to. My mom, she was totally different. My mom would rather struggle with Jesus her entire life than not have anything. And me, I believed in Jesus too, but I didn't believe that Jesus would allow me to struggle like this for my entire life. I didn't get it. I was so young. It didn't understand to me. Why did you choose us to go through this? Why did you allow us to go through this? And so I struggled with that for many, many years. And I stayed in that place for a very long time. But when I became like a young adult, I used to go to a church on Cherry Street. I'm not going to say the pastor's name, but I used to go to church, even though I was, out in the streets and stuff like that. I still would go to church, or I would still, make an effort to, pray, just all different things like that. So I went to church a couple times as a young adult, and the pastor in the church, I'd never felt the presence of God. At that church, it was just always condemning, oh, you're a sinner, you guys are going to hell, and just 24/7 all the time. I was like, man, this is whack. I know. I get it. I'm going to hell. Gotcha. What are we going to do about it? Let's figure that out. Never anything that's more edifying or anything like that, I would say. So I stopped going. But one day I was standing on Cherry Street, right? And again, I was selling marijuana. This is back when marijuana was illegal, straight illegal. So this gentleman started walking up to me, and you could tell that he was not there to buy what I was selling for sure. It was different. It was a different experience. Come to find out, this was the pastor of my mom. And he knew by looking at me in my face that I was my mother's son. So he pulled over. I didn't find this out till years later. But he pulled over, walked up to me, and he began to minister to me. He began to speak to me. And what he said, I knew that he was a man of God. I knew he was a man of God because I never met him in my life, but he was speaking to me. He was speaking to me. He knew, I don't know. It's just when God puts someone in your path, it's like they know exactly what to say to you. It's like God will send you a messenger, and he'll remind you of what God wants to remind you of that he told you a long time ago. And for that to come from a complete stranger, I knew that this was a person of God. So I eventually ended up going to church. I ended up going to this church. His church was on 18th in Columbia. His name was Pastor Willis, Pastor Ricky Willis. And so I went, and it just so happened that my mom was preaching her first sermon. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go there for that. I know my mom wants all her kids to be there, but I was the only one that went. So I went, and what she preached about was being a follower of Christ, where you're destined to be and those that aren't. And she really poured out her heart and expressed that, it's very painful for her to contemplate her being saved and going to heaven, and her children not being saved and not going to heaven. And it was very emotional. It was very, it was very, very emotional. And so I wanted to leave so bad, but I couldn't. I wanted to support my mom. So as soon as she was done, I got up and just ran out of there. And I just tried to get away as fast as I could. And when I opened the door and walked out, Reverend Marvin Charles was standing at the door. And he began to minister to me again. It felt like another person sent by God that began to minister to me. Now, Reverend Charles was I didn't know everything that he had been through at that time, but I would see him throughout the community. Like I would see him in the streets. He was like the only person. Like, you didn't really see too many pastors or too many people that were reverends or anything. You didn't see people in the streets and coming to communities and pulling up to where you're at and speaking to you, and not like just standing there and preaching the word and stuff like that. But I mean, literally caring for you, literally like being in a relationship with you, like growing with you and just being there for you. He was probably the only person I've ever seen do it ever since, 20 years, ever since I can remember. And so my encounter with him has always been, one of a father role, right? And me having father issues or not knowing my father is kind of uncomfortable. It gets kind of uncomfortable sometimes when there's a grown man that's there for you and you don't really understand why. You're used to, I'm used to it, and I know he's used to people always taking advantage or people always wanting, there's always an ulterior motive, right? That you never really find out until it's too late. So that's always looming in the back of your head, wondering why he does. Why are you so not? Why are you always giving things away? Why are you always there for people and never wanting anything in return? It doesn't make any sense. He's up to something. So I didn't really trust him, but I always would speak to him. And over the course of years, he always proved himself to be exactly that. Never want anything from you, just to let you know, hey, he would share a story. He would, when he came to church, he had a Crown Vic. He used to drive this Crown Vic, like one of those old, like police looking cars, right? He used to drive a Crown Vic, could fit 5 people in it, but he had like 9 people in there. Him, his wife, and like 17 kids in the back, and this is just what he did. There was no shame in who he was and what he did. It looked like, you see how like those clowns would open the car doors and just a whole bunch of people would get out. That's how his family was. They will open the car doors, and next thing you know, you got a whole bunch of people jumping out. And so that's just who he was. He was always, you would see him, you would see his wife, you would see his kids. And to me, that was very, very important, because it was somebody who had to fight. I didn't know what he was going through. I didn't know his experiences. I just thought he was saved, and he had been like that. I didn't know all the stuff that he went through until many, many years later. I just found out recently. And so he's always been like a pillar in my life, and been there during the trajectory and the changing, my life changing. And he has always helped. He's always been, somebody that I could look back on. And when my life was changing, he was one of the people that God used to speak to. And so eventually, fast forward years, because I end up being in and out of the streets for years. I remember there was a time where all my friends were going to jail. They were all either going to the state penitentiary or federal penitentiary, or getting killed. So I went and got a job to stay out of trouble, because everybody was getting killed and going to jail, and I just knew I didn't want to keep living that life. So I ended up getting a job at the Seattle Tennis Club. Yep, I worked down there for about 9 years. I think I got a job down there maybe in 2003, 2004, or something like that. And I stayed there for like 9 years, 9.5 years. And so I was there with like Robert Tom, Gina Bacani, worked with a lot of Mag, Chef Antoine, just a lot of different people down there. And that was good. That was helpful for me. But again, it wasn't what I was used to. So I started getting back into the streets and on again, off again. And then I just quit and just really went full-fledged all the way into the streets. And at that moment, when I was not wishy-washy, when I wasn't lukewarm anymore, when I just decided that I was going to be in the streets, that's when God literally came and really saved me. When I wasn't being 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And in my experience, I had a call to ministry. I had a call to ministry, which was quite scary and different, definitely different. And so after I left the Seattle Tennis Club, I went and got an AAS degree in business at Renton Technical College. I think from 2003 to 2005, I went there. And then I ended up getting my CDL because I was going into construction. At least I thought I was going into construction. Now, this whole time, I was always a sneaker collector. I was a sneakerhead. I was a sneaker enthusiast. So I would always buy sneakers like every weekend. Man, I was faithful in sneakers. This was my thing. I loved sneakers. I loved fashion ever since I was a child. I remember my mom, when I opened my business a few years ago, my mom told me that when I was a kid, I was 5 years old, that I told her I wanted to be a husband with kids and I wanted to be a business owner. And that was it. And so as a child, even in middle school, like I started cutting grass. I had a lemonade stand. I had different little jobs, summer youth employment program, different things to get jobs, and I always spend my money on sneakers. That was just what I did. So when it came time for me to change my life, and I'm really pursuing on a career, I thought I was going in construction. So God had me going in a total different direction. And so I was literally graduated from the PAX program, become an apprentice in electrician, right? But I remember I was praying. We were fasting and praying as a church, and I felt like God was nudging me in a different direction, and I didn't really know what it was. But I was sitting in a room one day with most of my sneakers, probably 600 or 700 pair of sneakers, and this was just the room with the majority of my sneakers. And I was just wondering, I was like, man, is this what you really want to do with your life? Or you really want to go this direction? You want to, is this what you want? And I was like, nah. Something in me was like, man, you want to own your own business. You've always wanted to own your own business. I was like, well, what am I going to do? And then it just came to me. It was like, well, what do you love to do? What would you do for free for the rest of your life? I was like, buy sneakers. Duh. Like, what? And so something just came over me. It was like very warming. And it was like, that's what you should do. That's where you need to go. And so I was like, all right, fine. Created a business plan. And what's very interesting is that I had to create a mock business to get my degree. It was like the last thing I had to do. And it was a mock business, and it was a sneaker store. It was a resale store. And so I got like an A+. It was really good. We had to come in, bring sneakers, set up and have a display, and like it was really, really cool. And so me and my partner, we ended up passing the flying colors with that. But when I got out of that, I was pursuing construction. It didn't even cross my mind that that's the field that I should be going in. So I started my own business, created a business plan, started Instagram. Instagram was new, and just began doing different things like pop-ups. So if you're not familiar with a pop-up is really where you would find somebody that owns a business, and then you would come into their business and you would set up shop. You would basically set up your shoes, your clothes, everything, buy racks, display all your stuff, and then you would do that for maybe a weekend or something, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so you would just pop up at someone's location and sell your merchandise. So I started doing that throughout the city. So I had one in Kent, I had one down in the pier, I had one in Belton Square. I had a few of them. I had like maybe 4 or 5 different pop-ups over the course of like maybe 2 years. Had my Instagram, my followers were growing, but it got to the point where I was being pulled in too many different directions. You got somebody in Everett that wants some shoes. You got somebody in Tacoma. You got somebody in Bill. So I had to be in one central location. And so it was a blessing to be able to come back to my old neighborhood and open my business right there in the heart of Seattle, where I grew up at, where I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of. But I would say I wanted to be in the Landing or Bellevue Square or South Center, and all of them were open to it. I shared my business plan with them and everything. They were all open to it. But again, as we were praying and fasting, I remember we were at the altar, we're all praying, and my pastor gets up, he grabs the mic in the middle of it. He said, God told me to say this. He said, God's not going to take you and put you where you want to be. He's going to put you where you need to be. And as soon as he said that, I knew for a fact that he wanted me to be in Capitol Hill, because that's where I had the most impact. That's where the people in the community that needs to see somebody come from where they come from and to transition, you know, to give up everything, to forsake everything that they know and everything that they did, their way of life, and to literally, you know, follow Christ, be a believer. And now that I am a business owner, now that I'm in this position, you know, then Marvin relocates from south end of Seattle to right down the street. And so now we're closer. I've been praying for mentors. I've been praying for you know, just people, coverings, you know, male influences, a better, a stronger study habit. And you know, I can go to dad's before I open my shop. I typically drop off my kids. I'm done dropping them off between 7:30 and 8 a.m. And then I can head over to dad's, and they got a plethora of books. I'll go read the Bible, read some commentary, you know, talk to different men in the area, and then I get to see people that are or where that are in the position that I was in or could have been in, and you know, sometimes I get to pray with them, sometimes I get to meet them. It's different, right? It's different to be called out of a position, but then called to it, to help it, to minister to people. And my business, that's kind of where I'm at now. You know, we survived COVID by the grace of God. We still have things that we have to deal with because we were closed for so many months. But you know, I think God has me covered. And so now I'm in a place where, you know, people will still come up to me and ask me, hey, you still some people want to buy, spend money. But no, I'm a different person, man. I've been saved. I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And so now those same people that come up to me that knew me in the streets, now these people will come up to me and ask for me for prayer. Now people will come and ask me to come with them to see their cousin in the hospital. I got mothers and fathers that want me to be a mentor or a role model to their sons and bring them by the store. So it's a different aspect. It's a different dynamic. And so God just changed my heart, changed my life, changed my trajectory, right? And so now I feel like it's going to be me that he wants to use to glorify himself in my neighborhood, in my generation, and in the places where I have influence.
Amen, amen. You want to pause there and let some people ask and discuss things with you?
Parris, let me ask you, could you talk a little about, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about your kids involved in your business, you know, your daughter working with you and stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you repeat that?
Sure. Say, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about your daughter being involved in your business with you and kind of the impact of, you know, how being a dad and a business owner works for you and your family. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I have my wife and I, we were like middle school sweethearts, right? I've had a crush on her ever since I was in like 6th grade. We started dating in between 8th and 9th grade summer. And so all of our kids, we had a kid at the age, I think I was 20 going on 21. So now she's 18 going on 19 and she goes to Seattle University. I have a 12-year-old daughter that'll be 13 this year. And then we have a set of twins that are 7 years old that is turning 8 this year. And so my daughter, especially my 12-year-old, she's a sneaker enthusiast. She's a sneakerhead because this is what kids are. If you guys have any kids that are into sneakers, I'm telling you, you bring them to my store, they're gonna be a kid in Candyland, right? And so
You're gonna need to get a job.
Right, exactly. So that's what I do with my 12-year-old, right? Because now my 18-year-old, she's not able to help as much as she used to, right? And she used to come through. She has better experience with social media than I do. I never opened a social media page until I opened the business. I didn't feel the need of having friends that I wasn't really friends with. That doesn't make no sense. And the lifestyle I was living, like, I don't want nobody looking at me. If I can't see you back, I got nothing to do that. So, yeah, I opened Facebook. And so my oldest daughter, she following in my footsteps. When I started a business, she started a business. And so I remember, man, I'm maybe 6 months in and I got like maybe 1,000 followers. I'm all excited. And my daughter at the time, I think she was like 12. She started her Instagram right after me, right? 6 months in, she has 10,000, 11,000 followers. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing something wrong. This 12-year-old kid gets it and I don't. So she started selling squishies, and she was selling these squishies, and then she would make slime. And at the time, man, this was so big. This was really, really big. So my daughter was able to school me and teach me something, right? I felt like an old fossil. I had no idea what was going on. So hashtags and all this different stuff. And so she was really there. She was really, really helpful. But she was inspired because she saw my desire to get up and want to plan and looking forward to the day and different things like that. So it had an impact on her life. And then when I opened the business, she could come and help out on the weekend. She could come and create some sort of campaign, a marketing campaign or something, YouTube, and she would just help me. Now she's in college, so she doesn't have as much as help. She can't help me as much as she wants to. But now my 12-year-old will come and work with me every other Saturday, right? And so she's a sneakerhead. Her friends, the people in her school are sneakerheads. They talk about sneakers. So what I do is I pay my daughter, I'll pay her $15 or $20. I don't remember what it is, right? I pay her hourly wage. And then I allow her to take that money and get whatever shoe that she wants to buy 50% off. So she's really, really benefiting from it. But the best thing about it, it's giving her the experience of being a business owner at this young age. There's this ministry group. I think it's a nonprofit organization, and it's called EYFO, Empowering Youth Family Outreach. And what they do is it's like a group of young people that they basically take from kindergarten all the way up to college, right? They just transition from one class to another. Well, my daughter's a part of this program, and it's entrepreneurship for her age group. It's an entrepreneurship program where they come together. They could create T-shirts, they create cups, they create all these different things, and then they sell it. And then the revenue goes back to the kids, right? All the profit that's made is split between all the kids that were there on those days. And so she's able to get exposure and understand business, making business, marketing. They take them to like Amazon, they take them to all different types of places, which is really cool. And then they come to my store where she's able to see like, okay, my dad will negotiate with people who have collections like I did. They want to come in, maybe they want to buy a house, or maybe they want to do whatever it is, vacation, and so they want to sell the collection. So you have to look and see what they're selling for online, and then you have to negotiate a price and get it a little bit below market so you can sell it at or maybe slightly above market, depending on what you get it for. So my daughter's able to see that. Then she's able to see the process of taking a product, making it presentable, and then listing it on the website, listing it on marketing, social media, Instagram, Facebook. And then the people aspect of when people come in, and customer service, and making sure that you treat people, remembering people, the way you deal with them, and then even dealing with controversy. Because sometimes people come in, we're in Capitol Hill, some people are, don't have money. So a lot of times I've given a lot of clothes and a lot of shoes away on Thursday or on Thanksgiving. What we do is we always come together We'll create a bunch of sandwiches. We'll go buy bottles of water and fruit or whatever it is. We'll create these pouches, and then we'll drive downtown and we'll just pass them out. Me, my wife, and all my children, and usually a couple people from my church. And also we'll gather clothes. We'll give clothes out. We'll give backpacks. We give all these different things that we can do on our own just to help. So my daughter experiencing, oh, hey, I see some people over there. Let's go over there and pass out the food as we're driving down the street, or, you know, realizing that, you know, somebody might, you know, need some help, or just somebody being rude. Sometimes there's rude customers. Sometimes there's rude people that you have to deal with, and you can't just defend yourself. You can't just treat your customers a certain type of way, whether they're paying customers or not. You have to treat everybody that walks through the door the same. And so it really gives her an aspect of business and professionalism. And it's really cool. It's really cool.
That is awesome education. I was thinking back when you were little and you just wanted to do something and help provide, you know, and I think we forget in our system that kids can do a lot of stuff even when they're little. Right. And feel good doing it. My kids, we're moving our house. They pulled out a big Gatorade drink bottle. You know, the water comes out of. They said, "Wait, you can't give that away. That was our first lemonade stand. That's where we put the lemonade." And they still remember sentimental years value. Ago. Yeah. I got to clarify something. I'm maybe crossing a line here, but all that time and your friends were going away to the penitentiary, you never did?
No, I didn't. I did not.
Somehow it seems like the hand of God on you there too.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And my experience, again, most of my friends were selling crack. They were, you know, I was in a gang. I grew up in a gang. I was gang banging. I was selling weed and different things like that, right? And I would be around when people were doing certain things. I remember one thing that was really big at a certain time in life was fraud. And so some people were doing fraud, and it was people that were going from having no money whatsoever to next thing you know, they got a whole lot of money. But I'm not a thief. I've never been good at it. I was a kid. I tried to steal a candy bar and I got caught. And I was like, oh, my career criminal is over. Like this is not what I'm good at. I'm not going to do this again. So there were certain things that I would see or I would experience, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not going that far. I can't do it, you know? And so it was always something that even though I sold marijuana, I knew that I was wrong. So the best thing that at the time when I was in the streets that I had going for me is that I knew I was a sinner. I knew that I was sinning, and I was embarrassed. You know, I was embarrassed to be around certain people. I was embarrassed to be around like real men of God, real women of God. I didn't carry myself a certain way. I was very respectful. To this day, like we used to go, my friend's uncle had a gambling house, and they used to always go over there and shoot dice and all type of gambling. Well, I was never a gambler. Like I tried shooting dice once. I lost $20. I was like, oh, this is not it for me. You know what I mean? So I was just like, oh, I'm not good at this. But what I used to do is whenever I go over there, he had, everybody will call it grandma or big mama, right? And so when we're coming into the house, all the younger kids would just run straight to the back. But my mom and my grandma, they instill some sort of morals, right? So whenever I was around elders, I would help them carry the groceries inside the store or from the car inside the house. I would help them put them away. Their grandma was sitting on the couch. Whenever I walk in the house, I'm coming in, I'm sitting next to her. I'm giving her a hug. I'm giving her a kiss. I'm asking her how her day is. I'm asking her if she needs something. I would spend probably 15, 20, 30 minutes with her before I would go hang out with my friends. And so my friends' moms, my friends' grandmothers, and my friends' elders who were really people of God and really believed in God and didn't want their kids doing that, but really had no control over them, loved me and would always say, man, I remember when you was a kid, you were always different, and I always prayed for you, and look at you now. I always get that as an adult now. You know, I always get Big Mama coming up to me, man, I remember you. I remember you back in the day, and this, and this happened, and you said this, or I remember you stood up for my nephew when they was trying to, you know. And so even though I was wrong, I wasn't willing to go too far. That some things were just too far, and I wasn't willing to do it. I was not willing to do it.
I have last thing, it just burns me up sometimes. I'll say it and then I'll shut up. You guys jump in. But you know, now times have changed. You got Uncle Ike's in the neighborhood, one of the biggest businesses there. It's all legal, and now there's no problem with it. And they're, you know, back last 20, 30 years, locking people up all the time.
Right.
Hey, I wanted to ask a question just related to that. As someone who is actually, I mean, we had Dan Satterberg actually come share with us at the fellowship a few years ago, the King County prosecutor, and he was very against the legalization of marijuana just because of, you know, just all that comes with it. So I wanted to know your opinion, you know, just with your history and your background. And by the way, just thank you so much for sharing so beautifully and transparently about your journey. And the side comment before you answer the question too, I think one of the probably good things that you learned from your mom being in the military and why you hung out with grandmas and stuff. I mean, obviously it was what your mom valued, but one of the good things about the military is very much a respect culture, and they teach you to respect and, you know, call everybody, because I worked with the military for almost 10 years, and they always, you know, treat you with great respect. And so that's clearly something that has been passed on to you.
Right.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So answer, if you don't mind, that question.
Okay, I will. And I also have to speak on the Uncle Ike's. So when I was younger, I, like I said, grew up on 20th and Union. So 23rd and Union, it used to be a Philly's Best back before, long in early 90s, it used to be a Church's Chicken, right? And so that, I got arrested in that parking lot for selling marijuana, right? I actually have been to jail in the sense that I got in trouble once. I got like a gun charge. I got caught with a gun before I was legally able to have one. But my grandma would always say, never accept a felony. Never go for a felony. And so they were doing this thing in the courts where if you got like a gross misdemeanor or something like that, if you got arrested, they would give you no jail time, but you would have to take a felony. And so all you had to do was sign this piece of paper. And so a lot of people had the opportunity when they got like arrested for like a petty crime, or when I got arrested for a gun, they told me, hey, would you like to take this felony? Sign this piece of paper. You'll do no jail time, but you'll have a felony on your record. And so instantly my grandma was like, nah, never accept a felony. So I said, no. So I took it to court. It was a gross misdemeanor. I had to stay out of court. I had to stay out of jail or out of trouble for like 2 years. And then they expunged it off my record. So it was a process, but I didn't accept what they were trying to give me. And so I didn't end up having a felony. Some people that I know were signing on that piece of paper, accepting their felony. And then when they actually get caught the second time doing drugs or guns or whatever it is, now they got 2 strikes on their record, and now they're going away for 20 years and 25 years. And so I didn't fall to that, but I know a lot of people that did. I actually have a friend coming home in a couple of weeks that got locked up like 18 years ago, 19 years ago for that same reason. But yes, in that parking lot on 23rd and Union, yeah, I got in trouble. I used to sell marijuana there and all that. Now it's legal. Now, as far as the legal aspect, I did do a little bit of research, right? And so more of a biblical standpoint is like is abuse, right? The word abuse is abnormal use. So if you take something that was intended for a certain use and you abuse it, that's drug abuse. Now, there is a medical aspect to marijuana. So do I understand that? 100%. If there's cancer patients, there's actually a kid that was 13 years old that was diagnosed with like a stage 3 cancer, lost all his hair, was dying. And he had to go to federal court. He had to go to all these different courts for him to be able to get a medical marijuana card because he was under the age. Well, he ended up passing, they ended up giving it to him, and he's still alive to this day. And he goes all over the world talking about his experience. And so for a medical standpoint, I could totally understand it because there are people who need it. But for recreational use, I don't think that was the intended purpose for it. And so people just using something just because they want to do it, you know, I don't think that's the intended purpose. Now, if God created this and allowed it to be created, what was the intended purpose that he wanted it to be used for, right? What was the cocoa leaf created for? Not for us to do crack. You know, what is the alcohol leaf or the tobacco leaves? What are all these different things that are being abused? What are they really, really intended for? And if we're using them for any other reason than the intended purpose, then I think that's wrong. You know, that's wrong.
Morning, Pastor Drake. I see you leaning in here.
Parris, just real quick. My grandson's a sneakerhead, so and he's going to CLU next year, so he's going to be in your store a number of times. But I'm going to set him up. It's fascinating on the drug situation. Fentanyl is just running rampant. I mean, it's a killer. In fact, they got billboards that fentanyl kills, and it's the cartels that don't give a rip. They just want the money, and they're killing off our kids. That's a comment. A question is, you mentioned your relationship with your bride that goes back a long ways. How did that survive when you were this wild kind of a guy selling marijuana and doing all this crazy stuff? And discuss that a little bit, because it comes back to your role, your incredible role as a father, as a dad.
I definitely will. I first got to point out Christopher Stone. This sir right here has a lot of energy, man. I remember meeting him at Dad's a couple of weeks ago, and boy, I felt like I should take his oxygen hose and I should use it. He had so much energy for me. I was like, boy, I'm tired now. So it's good to see you. Thank you. And yes, the fentanyl is killing young people by the droves, right? These young people are dying because they're taking pills, and some of these kids are taking pills because they want to be cool. Some of these kids are taking pills because their stress is so high and they don't know how to deal with it. There's so many different reasons on why kids are turning to drugs, and they're using these fentanyl to turn it into other types of drugs, and kids are dying. Kids are really dying. And if we don't have a heart for these people, if we don't have a heart for the kids, we don't have a heart for the future, right? So I do definitely have a heart for that. And try to deal and prepare my children for that, and being around that and prepare them, because I used to try to shield and protect them from the world, but that's not my job. God convicted me and told me, I didn't ask you to do that. You know, you're in my way, you're getting in my way. And so now I try to prepare them for making decisions when I'm not around. That's the best thing I can do. As far as me and my bride, she always believed in God. Now, just like me, she grew up in a drug home. Now, her story is worse. She's been through way worse than I have. She's been through way more than I have. And her will and her strength and her faith is so much more powerful than mine is. So much more, because her mom was on drugs. Her father was, everybody on her house was on drugs. Me, I had a mom that wasn't on drugs. I had aunties, uncles, and cousins, and everybody else who would do drugs, use drugs one way or another. But my wife, her entire family, she comes from a drug, pimp, prostitution household. Everybody either sold drugs or used them. And so for her not to go in that field at all, I remember when she was in middle school, her mom was on drugs, her parents was on drugs. So she didn't have parents. She didn't have parents. We both come from broken homes. And I think it was 8th grade, she had to go get a part-time job while she was in school, because she wanted to be a cheerleader. The only way she could be a cheerleader is if she paid for all the stuff herself. when she graduated from middle school and went to 9th grade, she had to go get the paperwork and enroll herself and then forge her mom's signature to enroll herself into high school. Right. I mean, there's so much I could go on for so long. My wife always tried to get me out of the streets. She did everything she could. She worked harder. She got more jobs. She would try to pay the rent because I was paying all the bills. She tried to make more money, all to just keep me from the streets. And there was times where she couldn't take it and she moved out and we separated, but it's literally only by the grace of God. Like, God put a forgiving heart inside my wife and allowed her to forgive me for my selfishness and my ambition to be in the world. And it's only 100% by the grace of God. That's it. That's the only way that we're together.
What's her first name, Parris?
Her first name is Tanya. Tanya Johnson is her name.
And then one last question. The 2 R's in Parris. Can you explain that?
So my mom, my oldest sister's name is Winter, and she spells it Winter. And then my second oldest, the closest to my age, her name is Summer, and she spells it Sommer. So my mom has this thing for taking something and making it different and just claiming it as her own. I don't know what it is. I can't really explain it to you. But I tell you what, she said my name was going to be Autumn if I was a girl. She thought she was going to have a girl. And my name was going to be Autumn. So thank God I'm not a girl. I don't know how she would have spat.
Harvey, hang on, Dan.
2 M's in the end. Autumn. Like, I don't know how she would have did that.
Hey, Parris, thanks for sharing the story in your life, man. It's great to hear what transformation actually was. Good to hear what transformation sounds like, but also look like. I didn't know about your store until today, and I'm not a sneakerhead, but I got to come up there and see your collection, brother. And I can definitely send people your way.
Right. Thank you.
But I think I had a couple of questions. One has to do with if you weren't a sneakerhead, you didn't have your soulmate business, what business do you think you would go into? Because it sounds like you have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Man, I've always loved to be a creator, right? I've always loved to create. I've always chased that. So I probably, when I was a child, I used to love to draw and design. So possibly an architect was a thing. And then a business owner as an electrician, because when my mother was married when I was younger, he was an electrician, right? And so at a young age, when my mother was in the military, her husband was in the military. They met in the military, but it didn't work out. He had issues and abuse that he had to fight through. My mom too had been abused and raped and all this as a child. So they both had issues that they had to fight through and didn't know how to do it. So it just didn't work out. But his impact as an electrician, he would take me to go do work. And I've always had a sense of, this is what a man kind of was for the 5 years he was in my life. And so I'm thinking I probably would have been maybe an electrician.
Right on. I just have a interesting comment. I've been grappling with this whole marijuana thing and the legalization of it all. I'm personally not in favor of it, but I always grapple with why we're so uptight about legalizing marijuana when we legalized alcohol years ago, and it has been so hyper destructive in our country. It's just mind-boggling. Obviously, we built this billion, if not $1 trillion industry around it, so it can't go away, right? Because everything is driven by economics in America. But it's just one of those things that make me go, that's interesting. Just a comment. I'll say nothing more about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I was in marijuana before it became legal. I started off like very small. I started off selling $10 sacks of weed. It was very, very minute. I was a very small time individual, but when I got caught out of it, I had became very prominent in that community. I used to rent houses out and grow, like turn the whole house into a grow house. And then I would, after growing the weed, then I would ship it all over the country, right? And you would get more money because it goes for a lot more in other places. So I was very successful and made a lot of money. I had more money then than I do now, you know? But I think for me, money was my God, because if God says, don't do this, and then I do it in the name of money, that's my Lord, right? That's my idol. That's who God is to me. And so I think with marijuana, you know, we have to realize and analyze why. You know, I'm not a theologian. I do study the word. I don't have the answers for everything, right? But I'm always willing to listen to your opinion. I'm willing to listen to other people's opinion, pray on it, and do my own research. I think when it comes to marijuana, it's definitely about money. I think it's definitely about money. And I've grappled with legalizing it and even opening my own marijuana store, you know, like, oh God, did you call me out of this? But it's too close to money ruling over me. And so I haven't done it, and I don't think I'm willing to do it. Where I'm at is if in the word, you know, studying alcohol, if it says, you know, if there's a difference between strong drink and then wine that isn't strong drink, and it's telling you not to indulge in strong drink, don't even consider it. And on the other hand, don't to have too much, then it's like, well, now I need to know why I'm doing the reason I'm doing it. How is this affecting me? You know, and for me, you know, studying the gluttony and that comes against the fruit of the spirit, right? And so anything I do too much of can go against the fruit of the spirit, right? And so if I'm not being in the spirit, then what am I? And what's that driven by? Because it's gonna be my greed. I don't want to give into that. And so I feel like definitely, just like with alcohol, as with marijuana, pushing it to be legal is a financial gain for the state, for the city, for whatever, for whoever's going to benefit off of it. But I don't think with medical, I've seen it help people medically. I really have. And I do believe that if it's something that is going to help somebody in a condition that they're in, if I'm laid up in the hospital and I'm in major pain, I'm given morphine. Morphine is a narcotic. It's an opiate, right? That's something that I believe that you can use for the intended purpose. But if you get addicted to it and you're using it for recreational use, I think you're taking that out of context. And I don't think God had any reason, you know, I don't think God wanted you to do that just to get high, just for your own selfish reason. And now we're lacking self-control, which is the fruit of the spirit. And so for me, I analyze, what is it for me? Why is it going to affect me? And where's it going to lead me to? And so I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to go for a legalization, but I would stand for medical use if it's going to help a cancer patient have an appetite when they can't eat, or if it's going to help them regain their health, right? That's the only way that I would be for me personally. But again, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying, according to what I have studied and what I have done research in, that's kind of.
Hey, Dan, jump in. I want to get you in before we kind of close in prayer and transition.
Yeah. Parris, thanks for being with us today. This is a real honor and a privilege. Actually, a question for Harvey. So Harvey, I've heard you mention a couple of times about, you know, the system keeping people down. I think I'm using that term correctly. So Parris mentioned this program where all a young person had to do is sign a piece of paper, and they're free, but they're also given a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. Is that part of the systemic issue that you've been talking about?
It's a deep question, Dan. Let me start by saying that I do believe that all that we do should help move people forward and not lock them into their current status. And if you set a condition that can hamper and hinder somebody from really moving forward, and sometimes that's what felony does.
Mhm.
It's a blight on your record, and sometimes it can hinder you from getting, reasonable work
Yep.
and being gainfully employed. So in that respect, I would go, I'm not sure that's something I would actually affirm myself. Because again, people deserve second chances. And sometimes the way we treat their crime, if you will, does not help them going forward. So that's how I would respond at this point.
Well, that seems to me that's a pretty serious thing to tell. And Parris, I don't know how old you were when you had that option, but that's a pretty serious long-term impact. It's almost like, it's dangling a carrot in front of, somebody. And sure, why wouldn't you take that? Because who really understands what a felony is, especially if you're 16 or 17 or 18. But that just seems to me a really serious thing to be throwing at a young kid when they don't know any better.
Yeah, definitely. That is real. And to add to the comment, it is 100%, I think, systemic. It was created. When I was younger, when this was going on, I was a young adult. I think I was 18, 19, 20, 21 range, right? And they did this thing called weed and seed. I remember they launched this new thing that they were doing, weed and seed, where basically they would catch you and doing something wrong, right? And then let you out and do it again. And they would do that over and over and over again. And basically gather as much as dirt on you as possible and then try to get you to either turn informant or lock you up for a lot of time. So what they started with was the weed and seed, and then it turned into, I don't know the term for it, but people started signing up, just signing this piece of paper. You take a felony, but you do no jail time. Second time you get caught, now you're doing 120 months to 240 months, right? 10 to 20 years. Then after you get this felony, it's hard for you to now get a job, a good paying job. It's hard for you to buy a house. It's hard for you to get acclimated into society as a normal person. You can't vote. You don't have these voting rights. You're not, you're not treated as you don't have the same opportunity as everybody else. And so it's really hard to come out of the situation where you have a felony and, get a job, own a house, any of these things.
Can't go be an electrician.
Exactly. Yeah,
because one of the first questions, they're going to ask is, even before you fill out an application is, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Yep.
And boom, there you are.
Right. That's one of the first things I ask you on a piece of paper. Have you been convicted in the last 7 years or 10 years or anything like that? So
yeah. Wow.
Hey, let me pause. Harvey, while you're still here, I want you to pray us out, and then we stay on for a little while, Parris, and chat some more if you got time. If not, people can go after this. But this has been awesome, man. I want to talk to you personally after about the empowering youth family outreach thing. I got some ideas for that. I love that idea.
Okay.
Harvey, can you give us a prayer and lift up Brother Parris?
I will. Thank you. I trust that we will all somehow be engaged in helping to prepare the generation coming after us for a better future and set them up to be the leaders that we need. Because I definitely want somebody like Parris and others taking care of me when I get too old to take care of myself, right?
Amen.
So there's a method to the madness, brother. So God in heaven, again, we're grateful to you for who you are. And we're grateful that you have invited us into your plan to redeem this world, God. There's so many things that are out of step and out of alignment with what you want and what you envision. Yet you are patient, because it is not your will that any should perish, but that all should come to a place of surrender to you, God. And I pray that you would help us to be the vessels that you need to share your grace, your love, your truth, your will with those around us. We're grateful for young men like Parris, God. I too had a similar background, and I'm grateful that you did not give up on him, that you will use everything he's ever experienced to help him be the better Parris he should be, and to help others see you for who you really are. He's a testimony of what transformation actually is, looks like, feels like, and can taste like. And so, God, continue to be with he and his family, Tanya, and be with the children, God. And I pray that you, that the light would shine in such a way that when people see their good work, that they would form a right opinion about you and glorify you, Lord. So help us all as we go through this day. Again, may we let our light shine in a way that when people see what we do, that they form a right opinion about you as well. So help us, strengthen us, encourage us, God, undergird us, cover us in every way that we need, that we can reflect your heart, your passion, your will, your plan and purview. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen. Harvey, I'm glad you're here.
Amen.
I think Parris should get hooked up with Urban Impact, your business development arm.
That's exactly
Oh, wow.
right.
Wow.
Exactly
Yeah.
right, man.
Business
want to take my number
mentors
down?
needed.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead and stop the recording first, Banked, before he shares that number.
Yeah.
Take care.